Hi guys, welcome back to Underwater Astrology. I'm currently in Washington, D.C., enjoying the park and weather so much. I want to say sometimes when we are called to talk about something, there's definitely magnetism here, and I have Chiron in 16 degrees Virgo. And I actually looked at my moon degree today in the Sabian symbol, and it was actually saying that I'm pretty much a window shopper. And that, like, with all this energy, like, what if I window shopped the new humanity? I know that's eccentric, but, like, what if we window shopped something with this moon of Mercury and Virgo retrograde harvesting, being like, let's harvest something beautiful. DC is definitely energetically at a really high vibration, one of the highest vibrations I've seen DC in a while. So good for DC, and it just shows you how, like, we, after 2012, the Mayan calendar, we went full third eye, and then after Jupiter-Saturn conjunction, it was like, cord cuts, like, it's going to be harder to expand. You're going to have to be so passionate and purposeful about everything, and then it's so important to realize that what we're going through it's so easy to escape with Neptune and Pisces, but Neptune's in retrograde. So we were all feeling like we could escape into smoking or escape into something before. For some of you, I don't know, I feel like addictions were really heightened around May. May was like the worst month. We were approaching the Scorpio eclipse, and we were seeing that everything is relative to something. Right? So everything is relative to something. To totally give up right now would be freaking stupid. Saturn's in Pisces. Do not give up. For anyone, I've been through hell and back with living situations. I'm pretty sure I have asteroid chaos there. But we're not going to talk about it. We're not going to talk about asteroid chaos. But what I want to say is, like, in order to alchemize things, yes, we have to go into wisdom. And yeah, that is really difficult because there's so much shaming and stigmatism and skepticism about being an astrologer. There's so many people in my family There's so many people in my family who ironically don't want me to do astrology. So many people were like, don't do astrology. Astrology saved my life. So what is it saying? Like, as I'm going through my Saturn return, music has continuously saved my life. All the things, when people place limits, I always question them. Why are you limiting me? And this is actually really, really interesting because I feel like Saturn in Pisces is the most, like, I don't know to, like, freaking know, you know, because it's like somebody could be like totally projecting something, and then you don't know till you'll know. So I feel like for native Saturn and Pisces, stay around people who are like super passionate about what they do. And with passion, there's limitation, right? Because it's Saturn, but realize, like, Pisces is so compassionate. So somebody with a native Saturn and Pisces, like, is just, like, so compassionate that they don't even realize, like, it's such a whirlwind. This is a bit of a Saturn return underwater astrology episode. It is a bit of a whirlwind because it's, like, Saturn and Pisces, like, imagine two fish, one going unconscious, one going into the conscious. Some people say it's, like, the soul and the human. I always think of Pisces similar to Gemini because of the glyphs, and Pisces reminds me to go in survival mode. And then what I realize is like, our society has changed. Cities are changing. Sometimes I wonder, is this Hunger Games? You know what I mean? Is this a modern day Hunger Game? And in Baltimore, we had things closing down, literal Department of Human Services, things like actual needs for people slowing down. And that's when you really start to think, this is a crisis. Because it's like, that is the lowest low. If you have the Department of Human Services slowing down. These are supposed to be some of the most compassionate people. And you have them slowing down. We already have police brutality. That's bad. We already have police literally at every corner. We almost have the police, but they're almost in the wrong places at the wrong time. I'm like, where is the police at the right place at the right time? They always seem to be in the wrong place at the wrong time, probing a situation, right? But I'm not going to go there. Now I'm focused on Department of Human Services. And with Pisces, the only way to go through Saturn and Pisces is through compassion, right? So it's like, let's feel the compassion. And then when you come to the compassion, it's cut, right? Because it's Saturn. And that's why Saturn and Pisces is so complicated. Because it's like, you're so compassionate, but the cords are cut for you to breathe that into a passionate, conscious energy into something else. It's almost like a fish who has to go through many different water to find the best terrain. And that's how I feel, especially with it being in my first house. You know what I mean? Like, I was acting, at moments in my life this year, I was acting like a shark out of necessity. Do I regret it? Deep down inside, no. I don't have a lot of regrets in this life so far. I think that there is a lot of psychological debris that I'm working through with the Saturn return, but do I have regrets? No. If somebody gave you 4 pieces of wood and you turned it into gold out of pure knowing and nobody was hurt, would you feel bad? No. Exactly. And that's the thing. It's like, can you get mad at me for doing alchemy? Can you get mad at my inner genius? Most of people are going to go through this psychological flare-up because they're going to be like, what is this person doing? And what is that person doing? And they're not realizing that Saturn and Pisces want to go to consciously passionate into devoting yourself into something. And it's going to keep cord cutting till you are so passionate about something, you forget who you are. And that should be the next 2 years. It's not easy getting there because it requires a lot of rejection. Pisces is so familiar with humility because Pisces is the last sign. It's the 12th house. Almost people are... Pisces have to... Out of all the signs, Pisces has to do the most journaling. Only because you guys have to watch your subconscious mind more than anyone, and you can't give anyone else that responsibility. You have to be like, I'm thinking this and I'm thinking that. And you can't be like, somebody's watching me think those things. You have to be like, where are those things coming from? Am I in the right environment? Do I need to change? And that mutability makes you genius, Pisces. It's important to remember Albert Einstein was a Pisces. Okay, so it's like Pisces, if they're in the right environment, they thrive. I'm a Pisces, progressed Pisces rising. I always had Pisces in my natal first house, though. So I've always been kind of like, I'm going to just be a little bit over the top to be a little bit more recognized, to feel like I'm in the right environment. I always knew I had to be a little bit more eccentric to be in the right environment. And that's why now I'm progressed Pisces, full Pisces rising. Now it's Saturn there. Now it's like, it's not necessarily the eccentricity that I'm focused on. It's the devotion. And where does it come down to? These things I pay for monthly, Reiki services, astrology, these things define my soul. If you were to look at my soul's blueprint, you just see Reiki, light codes, aliens, like codes from other dimensions. You would just see a map into Reiki energy. And it's like, these places are expensive. These places take really hard work and focus and concentration just to show up. Like, just to show up with, like, shoes that are not broken, laces that are tied, sober mentality, an ability to stay up for 8 hours while someone is talking about an auric field. Like, it's not A squared plus B squared equals C squared. It's like pi. It's like ground yourself so hardcore that by the time you show up, you're just so grounded. And that's what I'm trying to do is, I'm putting this video out because I usually work with intentions. I knew South Node Libra was going to be like, you have to be on the right side of law. And that was the biggest, heaviest spirit guide message I got. And that was months ago. And that was because I was going to feel our goal. Like feeling like people were pressuring me to having goals and they were going to mess with me. I already knew that 6 months ago, but I didn't know that it would actually manifest actually on earth. Like people actually calling me out for things that didn't matter or are not true, and bringing in the law. So with South Node Libra, North Node Aries, I still say be careful with the law. Here, the law is more subliminal. It's the law of potential here. We're working with the law of potential, the law of potentiality, right? So there's a lot more risk involved. You guys know there's 12 universal principles. I highly suggest looking those up. If you're into human design, that's great, but at the end of the day, human design will bring you to your utmost knowing, and that's really, really intense, because you have to realize, like in human design, there's like conscious lines and there's unconscious lines. The conscious lines are actually running through your body, and there's so much like higher, the vibration is higher. When you're conscious about something, the vibration is higher, you know? So when you're consciously like, I feel happy, I feel like I'm moving, there's movement, there's routine, like my soul's moving. Well, that's when you start to feel like you're a part of something. You don't feel as depressed, especially with my Saturn return in my first house. Some of you can just feel with Saturn and Pisces that you are just, the water is going everywhere and it's not being controlled and used. Like, for example, Saturn and Pisces is someone who should be energy conscious. Like, I'm vegan. A lot of Saturn and Pisces people I know are somewhat conscious. The more unconscious they are, the more the people around them feel heavier. Like, they just feel like they have to watch their mess, right? So as soon as the Saturn and Pisces gets conscious about, for example, their energy, it's not like personal things like Saturn and Gemini with communication. It's Piscean things. So these things are the psyche. These things are light working. These things are Reiki, right? These things are moving through the hurdles, the energetic hurdles. Saturn in Pisces is going to bring us energetic hurdles. How do you get through this vortex to the next paradigm? You think this is the last paradigm? This is opening us for 2025, Neptune and Aries, Uranus and Gemini. Are you ready for that world? Nobody's talking about it. Uranus and Gemini? Jesus Christ. That's going to be all about Reiki. Neptune and Aries, that's going to be all about goddess, God energy. And that's going to be when you really want to be in the right place. For some of you, you could be hoping to be in the right place. And I'm not saying you necessarily have to move. I'm saying in the right place psychologically to tackle your dreams. Because there's just no point in staying. There's no point in staying like a Fruit Loop when you can be a Cinnabon, okay? Like, what I'm trying to say is that with those two energies, you have to be real. Neptune and Aries, that's the energy of having higher ideals about yourself. I have aura in Aries, so I could imagine Neptune being there, me feeling like my energy is super big and like super big, like super healing. And then with Uranus and Gemini, I could imagine just feeling like hits of higher energy. And I'm not going to lie, I did like Uranus and Taurus, but I think where we're at now, we just need to move through it, sadly, because Uranus and Taurus, like, even though we're out of North Node and South Node, North Node Taurus, South Node Scorpio, Uranus and Taurus is like kind of slow. So like, we're not getting those hits and flashes of intuition with resources, earthly resources, till really low. Like, The only thing I can talk about the situation for me in Baltimore is that whoever this mayor is, oh God, he is not putting in the work to bring in social justice in terms of actually feeling safe. Like, I don't know, there's something in Baltimore that happened, and it was starting this summer, last summer. I started to feel it, you know? I started to feel in my soul. What's going on? I can't really talk about anything. But then I started feeling this energy of knowing, and that energy was it's Fortuna. Baltimore is kind of Fortuna-y. It is kind of like you invest too much in it, you could totally lose everything. And that's how I feel about the city entirely. Like, I would never invest in anything in Baltimore. I wouldn't invest in a business. I wouldn't invest in stock there. I wouldn't invest in anything, because I think that the city itself lacks resources. Like, actual resources. I was living there last summer, and electricity was cutting out every week. I was like, I couldn't do that this year. You know, it was really sad. The city is really, really sad. And I don't think anybody's really exposing it, because people are just like so grateful that a city so cheap like that exists. And yeah, it helps people survive. It is a bit difficult, especially in our new society. Like with Neptune and Pisces on my first, it's like I could project myself so intensely and alchemize everything, but because I chose a life of spirituality rather than materialistic desire, like I don't drive a car, I don't drive a fancy car, or I don't drive a car yet, right? So these are laws of, it's all law of potentiality with Saturn and Pisces. You don't have these things, right? But it's like, at the same time, like, I'm not saying I'll never have these things. And it's like this energy of like, for example, I've always wanted to be a model. And like when I was younger, I was like, I asked band members like if they needed dancers and stuff. I was really like progressive in my personality. I was, back Aquarius rising days, very eccentric, will do the funniest thing to bring people into hope and laughter and faith. And then that's how I had my band and stuff, and that was really fun. But then it progressed into Pisces, and I became emotional and intuitive and more introverted and stuff like that. But what I'm trying to say is, like, I worked with the energy of Saturn and Uranus to control the rebellion and bring it for like long-term freedom. And that band and what I did in those Aquarius rising days will always bring me there. But like the Pisces rising is now like, okay, like for even more abundance, we're going to have to bring in some of like Apollo's harp here. I think it's important to be like, my dream is to do sound healing. I want to do sound healing in Baltimore. I want to do sound healing in DC. I want to do that every month. Sound healing events. If someone would hire me, that would be great. I don't know who, but I would love to do sound healing and have friends sell art and people do tarot and it just be an open space. And that could be really fun. I also like the idea of creating healing events. I'm also new at this, but DC's energy is so much more progressive than Baltimore. I also like the idea of being like material. The dimensionalities of materiality are not confirming what I truly know and believe, is that if everything is atoms and protons, then it all is movable. Like, you could feel so sad right now, but feel so happy in 2 minutes, right? Like, it's just about moving the energy. That's why I'm a hardcore believer of Reiki and things. But when we're talking about cities, that's when I have to do the deepest, most inner reflection in my soul. And I can't do that alone, because you know why? It's Archangel Michael. It's like you need people to understand who you are on your deepest level. And that's things that like your physical body could not express. And these things come through communication. So for example, I have a moon in Taurus in the 3rd house. I love talking. I love communication. But am I meeting people in that city who are on that vibration? No. Most of the time, it's very ninth house. It's very Scorpio ninth house, actually. It's very much the opposite of what a moon in Taurus needs. When I'm in DC, of course, my moon and Taurus needs are met. It's like I'm seeing people as family, and I'm seeing them all the time. Also, my moon and Taurus is so happy. The trees, the birds, I'm seeing different cardinal birds. I'm also seeing like different kinds of food, and when you do Reiki, you do kind of get more specific about like your astrology, because like the thing is like some of you could be playing a different person and you don't even know it, and like your whole life you're playing this other person and trying to meet their needs, but their needs are never satiated, and you live an empty life. But then when you start doing Reiki, you realize, no, like I am a moon in Taurus, so I do like a good cup of chai tea and some dark chocolate. I do like red pandas, you know what I mean? Like those are things I like as a moon in Taurus. Like nobody could ever change that. And with Progress Leo, it's like this life is not a dress rehearsal, and that's the most intense part. Is like Progress Leo is like, it's not where you're like trying on different things and you're like, oh, does this look good? This look good? No, it's like Progress Leo is like, no, you're definitely saying something when you do things, and you're focused. And I think there's a lot of things that could be said about South Node being in Scorpio. I thought DNA was in Gemini for the longest time. It shows you how maybe I was depressed about certain situations in my family, but they didn't really alchemize to like my higher pineal gland. So I was just like in more lower survival states in relation to my family and what was going on. And then I realized DNA was in Leo, and I was like, oh my God, like we gotta go. Like there is just no time. Like no time. Like we are in the moment. We are in the present moment right now. So it is like when you really do catch up, then it's like you realize DNA's in Leo. And you realize, this is the most heart-opening time on Earth at this specific moment. You could meet anyone, you could say anything could happen. But you have to remember, Saturn is, in fact, in conjuncting DNA in Leo. And with that, when there's inconjunctions, yes, it does bring intense fear, right? Because the intense fear is of you needing to ground your energy and you needing to alchemize it. And that is purification, and that is a process. And that's why you surrender to the light. And you say, I am a light body. Nothing bad can truly happen, And you realize that even though somebody might be living above you and they might have a dark energy, it's not like they're higher than you. Like, it's the psychology, Saturn and Pisces, like, oh, they're high. No, they're just another person with another thing. It's what this is bringing you back to is that fourth house, that hierarchy in your family, what was valued. Everything is really coming back to like Taurus, Jupiter in Taurus, We have some placements here that are really, really intense. I do think this is a light prediction. I'm not saying degrees or I'm not saying dates, but I do think that in October, November, that's when we start seeing the alchemization of everything. Like, I feel like you're going to see the deepest part of people's souls the rest of this year. It's up to you to like show yourself and be available to that access. And it's not going to be something you can hide away from. It's going to be out of the uttermost needing to expose aspects of yourself, to alchemize it to higher light. Because there's no reason in carrying the baggage. There's no shame here. You need to grow. The earth is changing, but it's like fundamentally there are things at play with the astrology. For example, valuing yourself and valuing your experiences and your trauma so much so that you can be seen is something that I'm working on. Like, why do I feel like I have to hide? Why do I feel like the things I've done make me a bad person. And then don't blame the president. The president's not living in your house. Yeah, of course there are bad people. But it's like you knew that when you signed up in this life. You knew that there would be haters. So it's important to just understand that, you know, with all this Neptune, these gadgets and stuff, we do want to dream our life, but it is a process of understanding rejection and understanding timing. Because, like, we used to live in a time where I feel like before Corona there was less rejection, but when I think about it, we're not talking about rejection. We're talking about humility. And that's the thing.